think this track will suit him better, but the ground would remain a little bit of a question mark.
OK, those are the 5 for our centrepiece race this evening here at Sandown, the Cantor Fitzgerald Brigadier Gerard Stakes. Remember that number 2, Boom and Bust, does not go.
There's Main Sequence, who this time last year was placing in the Derby, of course. He's priced up at 9-4, 2-1 Dana Dana. And money for Mukhadram, 4s into 7-2. Chris quite likes him. Miblish is 5s. And there's a bit of money for Proud Chieftain, 33-1 into 25-1.
I've been joined by Matt Kamani, assistant trainer to his father Luca, and they're represented by Dana Dana here. Now, congratulations on the win in the Huxley last time, but it was quite an odd race that he ran. How did you explain it to yourself?
Well, he hated the course and the ground, and you could see it around the first bend. He was out wide and was scrabbling around, and the ground was very loose on top, but I think a bit firmer underneath. Probably a little bit different to how it is today.
Yes. Was the rain bad news for you, though?
Yeah, it's not great. I think we'd prefer him on good ground, but we're not going to pull him out for good to soft because he did so well at Chester on it.
Yeah, he did really well to win in the end, actually.
He did, yeah, really well. It's really encouraging, yeah.
He looks like, therefore, is he an improved horse this time around? Because it was a great win in that competitive handicap at York last year. Is he better now?
I think he is, yeah. I think he has come on. Yeah, he's a bit like Afsari. It's the same family, and I think they just get better with age.
And in terms of how the race is going to be run, do you think it's going to run to suit you?
Well, I think it's going to be quite tactical, I think. I think Ryan will probably try and get an easy lead, and it'll be down to those two about who goes first, I think.
Okay. Well, very best of luck. You've got an improving horse.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
So there is Dana Dana, and you heard the tactical task that Kieran Fallon faces from Matt Kumani there, and it is going to be a tactical race.
Yeah, I think it is. Miblish, the one who's most likely to lead, though, took a lead at Chester in the Huxley. Proud Chieftain, the other pace alternative, I suppose, the other one that has made the running. And I think if that horse goes on, Ryan Moore will probably just sit behind on Miblish and ensure that he's got a prominent position. But whichever way, I think Miblish is going to be well placed as this race goes, because they're definitely not going to go too quick. So I think Miblish, I think he'd have won at Chester if he hadn't have got hampered when he did. You've got to balance that with the fact that Dana Dana just didn't like the track or the ground, it would seem, and judging by what Matt Kamani said there, it was both of them. There was definitely something not right because he didn't go through the race in the same way as he had done in the past. So he'll be better suited certainly by the track, but as I said earlier, not necessarily by the ground. So I think Miblish is an interesting runner, and I think Mukhadram's interesting. Did you think Miblish should have won at Chester as well, probably?
Yes, I think he probably would have done. I thought he was severely disadvantaged by meeting that interference at exactly the wrong time and might have scored against a horse that was finding everything against him in Dana Dana. But I very much take the point again that you've got to factor in the fact that the track, I think, will suit him better, but the ground maybe still not so good. Main Sequence now the favourite. Now, I wasn't there at Ascot when he ran. You know, maybe he's taken a good step forward condition-wise.
He might well have done. For me, I'm not sure that the shorter trip is going to suit him, particularly in what looks like it might be a steadily run race. I just don't think it's entirely straightforward. We were having this conversation earlier on. It's interesting that they took the step to geld a horse who'd been second in a derby. That to me would suggest that he's not straightforward at home, and I'm only guessing. I don't know, but it would seem an unusual decision to make to geld him if not.
Quite early, decisive, isn't it? And it seems from his entries as though they're not entirely sure at what trip he'll excel. He's got an entry in the Eclipse over 10 furlongs over this course and distance, in the Hardwick over 1.5 miles, and in the Irish St Leger.
And he's been tried over staying trips at the back end of last season. He obviously ran in the Leger, didn't he? I mean, his form lines are strong. He's got the strongest form lines in the race, but it's just a case of whether or not he's as good as his very best form still, and there are other horses that are improving. I personally couldn't have him at that price, but I can see why people are backing him. You're going back about a year, almost exactly, to him finishing second behind Camelot in a derby.
Mukhadram's an interesting one. Last time he tried 10 furlongs was in the Tercentino at Royal Ascot, where he sort of faded a little bit late. He then showed good form when 5th in the Cambridgeshire. That's over 9 furlongs. What do you think's going to be his trip this time around?
I think he'll get 10 furlongs well enough, particularly in a race like this, and I think this will probably prove his trip, but he'd probably be effective at a well-run mile as well, because he does travel well through his races, and he did flatten out a little bit in the Cambridgeshire. But as I say, it was quite early on in his career that, and he was relatively light on experience. I do think his form lines are pretty strong. I mean, he's got that second place to Sovereign Debt. He was second in a lock-in, wasn't he? And he was an improving horse at that point. So his earlier form lines as well are pretty solid. So I think he's one that can still improve quite a bit.
And he might improve for this race because, unlike the others, he hasn't had a race so far this season.
He hasn't. And it might be that he's a little bit short on fitness. We'll find out. But I think him and Miblish are the two most interesting horses in the field.
Now, Proud Chieftain is looking a little bit mulish down at the start. He was looking better in himself and his coat, but he's not behaving better this time around. Remember that Richard Hughes takes over from James Doyle on Proud Chieftain, and hopefully he will be joining the other foals in the stalls. He's on his way slowly, so let's join Ian Bartlett for our call for the Brigadier Gerard.
So Proud Chieftain comes forward to stall number 4, persuaded in. That's it, he's lined up, ready. They're off. They race away. It looks like Miblish might have just slipped a little bit coming out of the stalls. Doesn't lose any ground. And Mukhadram in the blue and white colours. Paul Hannigan is the leader in the early part of the Counter Fitzgerald Brigadier Gerard Stakes. Going through into second position is Main Sequence. He's a length and a half off the leader. And then Miblish, who's about 3 parts of a length further back. Ryan Moore in the whites and red colours. Dana, yellow jacket for Kieran Fallon is 2 lengths behind this as they're now through the first quarter mile. And Richard Hughes now on Proud Chieftain is 1 length further back in the purple and red colours at the rear of the field. Well, only 5 runners, but it's a strong gallop, and it's about a 4-length lead for Mukhadram and Paul Hannigan as they head down to the end of the back straight. Main Sequence just begins to close on him a little bit in second place. There's almost 2 lengths to Miblish behind him. Red and white stripes on the cap, who holds third position as they now about to make the turn out of the far side. Dana, the yellow colours, continues to hold 4th place. He's about 6 lengths off the leader at this stage, and 3 lengths behind him comes Proud Chieftain, who continues to be the back marker. So Mukhadram is on the turn out of the back straight, leads by a couple of lengths over Main Sequence in second place, and then comes Miblish in third. Dana continues to hold 4th. Proud Chieftain is the back marker. 3.5 furlongs to go. Into the straight they come, and Mukhadram continues to have the advantage. Main Sequence in second place is chased along to close on him, and then Miblish in third. He's still travelling nicely in front, Mukhadram. Dana on the right in the yellow jacket is struggling to pick up at this stage. Proud Chieftain is next. 2 furlongs to go. Mukhadram in front. Can Main Sequence get to him is the question now. He's 3 lengths behind him. Miblish is in third. Proud Chieftain has taken 4th. They're approaching the last furlong. Mukhadram, Paul Hannigan continue to be in front with a good lead. Main Sequence is making progress inside the last furlong. Entering the last 100 yards. Mukhadram in front. Main Sequence has closed the gap to a length. He's struggling to get past though. It's Mukhadram and Paul Hannigan in front and made all. Main Sequence couldn't get on terms with him. Miblish ran third. Proud Chieftain 4th.
What a fascinating Brigadier Gerard. Paul Hannigan has made all for William Haggis on Mukhadram in the colours of Sheikh Hamdan Al Maktoum at 3-1. That advantage that he had on the whole field was diminishing pretty steadily from 2 furlongs out as Main Sequence ran on despite flashing his tail for Ted Durkin and David Lanigan, but he couldn't quite bridge the gap. Miblish has stuck on in third. Dana seemingly has hated the ground again, and he's been eased ultimately after never travelling, and Proud Chieftain has managed to pass him to get 4th, but Mukhadram has made all and made a victorious start to his 4-year-old career.
A very different race tactically to what I thought it might be, but Mukhadram, who made the run-in, it seemed at a fair enough pace, has just lasted home. I think that if the horse in second had wanted it more, he might have finished second, the winner, and if there'd have been a slightly more straightforward one chasing him, he might have just been pegged back, and this is definitely as far as he wants to go in terms of trip, but he saw it out okay. Main Sequence definitely isn't straightforward, is he? When he came properly under pressure, I thought he put his head to one side very slightly, and he was definitely flashing his tail under pressure, and he's not entirely straightforward, and Dana just definitely doesn't like easy ground. To his credit that he was able to win last time out, but once again he's not travelled at all, and this is in stark contrast to the way that he went through his races last year. Give him another chance on a fast surface, and I don't think that Miblish likes soft ground either. That's a